So, a question that is asked a lot is if your life is so bad, if your situation's so bad, if you're so unhappy, why don't you just change things? And this isn't even really meant to be a insult. It's just saying, well, you hate your job, why don't you just quit? If it's making you want to kill yourself, isn't it logical to leave and try to find something else rather than kill yourself? Because there's a chance you might find something else, but if you kill yourself, then you'll never find something else and you'll be dead. And it's interesting, and I don't think this is really explored enough as to why people make those decisions. And the logic, the answer that's normally given is that the person's weak and they just aren't strong enough to change, or they're cowardly, or they don't really want to change. There's kind of a lot of I think kind of unhelpful, and that's kind of one of the things I try to do with these videos is not to pathologize, but to kind of empathize, to kind of understand where these feelings come from, to explain them so that we can confront them together. It's to kind of bring them out of the subconscious, bring them out of the darkness and into the light, and then we can start to kind of look at them. So the question is, once again, why, if people's situations are so bad, don't they change them? Even if it's something crazy like taking your life savings, moving across the country, if it's, I don't know, just let's say you're lonely, just going up to random girls at a bar or whatever until you find somebody. Why is it that a lot of cases people will prefer death or to stay in an absolutely unbearable situation rather than move? And I think it's a question of comfort. And I think something you have to keep in mind when you're talking about the concept of comfort is you aren't just comfortable in a good situation. To me, the definition is kind of comfort is you settled into degree of normalcy, I guess you could say. You've reached kind of a place where you know everything, good or bad. You know what, like if you're in an abusive relationship, you know what to expect in the relationship. You know X person will hit you probably this many times, etc. They might insult you, whatever, but you know what it is. It's not an unknown unknown. It's not even a known unknown. It's something you're familiar with. And I think as humans, and this is probably just a survival instinct, we're able to take a lot of punishment, particularly if we understand the bounds of it. And I think our natural inclination, particularly when you're depressed, is to seek comfort, to seek an equilibrium, to seek kind of, like I said, something where it's reliable, something where you're used to your surroundings, even if that's ultimately very unhealthy for us. And to that extent, this kind of, once, like I said, it's this search for comfort is independent of whether or not something's good for us, whether or not something makes us happy, whether or not something is pleasant. You can get just kind of into this position, and there's a number of different, I guess you could say, kind of reasons for it. One, the fear of the unknown is hard for everybody. It's just a natural part of being a human. And I mean, this is understandable. The unknown is scary. This comes from our past. You didn't know if you were going to be able to eat the next day. You didn't know if a predator was going to kill you. You didn't know if your tribe was going to break apart. And a lot of human history has been about trying to face down this fear of the unknown. We started growing crops because it's more reliable than chasing animals around. Same thing with domestication, medication, and refrigeration, and that stuff reduces the unknowns of disease and food being bad. Ultimately, kind of what we want is a very regimented life. That's not to say you don't have free time or whatever, but the less things in your life that are unknown, that aren't things that are subject to change, the more comfortable you'll get. And once again, this is different from happiness. and it's different from things that are actively good for you. And I think to a certain extent, when people ask, why do you stay in abusive relationships? Why do you continue to be around toxic people? It's because you know who they are. Like, you might be married and your husband might beat you, but you know him. He's someone who's familiar to you, and to leave him and to go out is to go in and find something different. Now, people say, well, it's to a certain extent, it's a fear of that what you find might be worse. But once again, if you so desperate you want to kill yourself or throw yourself off a bridge, shouldn't you take that chance? But it's not rational. I think you have to keep that in mind, that this isn't a rational fear to a certain extent. I mean, the fear of some to a certain extent, the fear of the unknown is rational, but often in someone who's depressed or has anxiety, that fear is racketed up well beyond kind of rational limits. So you have a person who has an innate fear of change, an extreme fear of change, and what they normally get is, because of this and because of their inclinations, they kind of withdraw deeper and deeper and deeper into themselves. And this is kind of where you get some of the professional NEETs, or people who just never have a careers or go or leave their houses. Their lifestyle is utterly horrific. They're basically, a lot of them are just sitting around not interacting with other humans until their mind rots and they gradually kind of go crazy, but they know where everything is. Their suffering is something familiar to them, and they take a certain perverse type of a pleasure in it, and a certain perverse type of enjoyment in it. I'm not blaming people for this. I'm very much like this myself. But that's the reason why these people don't change. And in a lot of cases, if you try to pull them out, if you give them medication, if you give them therapy, you try to change their life, it just won't take, because there's such that deep-seated just issue with change and with taking away their comfort. In a lot of cases, that's all they have left, is they don't really have any hope for the future, that things can get better. They don't really enjoy their present, but all they have really to hang on to is that they understand the world around them. And change is very painful, particularly for someone with depression, and a lot of people just can't handle it. And they find the idea of death less stressful and less possible than changing. And I just bring this up, and part of the reason I'm making this video is, like I said, it's very easy to talk to somebody and say, well, you should change your life, you should do this, 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 and this. But it's not that simple. It's not that straightforward. If it was, then people would have done it. To just blame people for a lack of, and I know I've done this in the past on other issues, but in this particular context, to just blame people for not trying hard enough, for not having enough will, etc., is kind of dodging the problem. Well, that's certainly an issue in a lot of cases. A lot of people really wish they could get better, and they just find that they aren't capable of it, no matter what they try. And it's tragic. And how do you deal with it exactly? It's a hard issue. I think probably the best thing you can do when you're in kind of this situation, you're trying to break out of this kind of prison of your mind, is, I think it's something Jordan Peterson said, and I have to read a bit more about it, but I think he said something to the effect of, he talked about psychological momentum, and his advice was, go clean your room or go clean something, and then that'll motivate you. You go and you try. You can't fix all your problems overnight. That's just not what's possible. And what often will happen is people will suggest these radical changes, and it's not helpful. Like, just a lot of people who try to give advice, they'll be like, oh, just go put yourself out there, just go to bars, try to meet women, you just need to go do all this stuff, go move, quit your job, etc. And they'll give kind of this really broad, radical advice that isn't really helpful, because the person just isn't in a mental position to be able to change that rapidly, that quickly. And is that the person's fault? Maybe or maybe not. But these videos are about reality. They're not about blaming people, etc. So in my mind, in my view, the only thing that's ever worked for me, and the only thing I've ever really seen work for other people, is you have to just try to keep making improvements. And you can't get discouraged if you're not going fast enough. So if you never leave your house, try to go to the store like a couple days a week or something, just to start off with. Even if it's just to go to the, I don't know, go get a coffee, sit there, kind of maybe acclimatize yourself to people. If you're fat and you want to lose weight, you have to do it gradually. You can't just go cold turkey, because that doesn't. For some people, they can do that, but just if you're drinking those 2 sodas a day, start off by trying to cut it down to one, or something like that. Or try, instead of doing a full like workout routine every day a week, maybe try to work out one day a week. And you just have to kind of keep going and making these changes. Maybe if you hate your job, don't quit, but start looking for other jobs, even if it's an hour or two a week. And you have to, I think, just keep going, and you have to tell yourself, I'm trying to make changes. I'm gradually progressing. I'm little by little, even if it's something small. And this is normally the advice I give people. They're like, I don't know where I'm going with my life. I have no idea what I'm doing, etc. And I'll say, just, do you have a part-time job? And they'll be saying, no, I'm not. I'm like, so I'll tell them, maybe get a job and maybe work a couple days a week. It'll do wonders for you. It just get something stocking shelves. You don't have to get something where you are working with customers, but just being out, doing something useful. You make a couple bucks. It's not really about the money though, but that helps you get into the state where the next thing seems more possible. You can't fix all your issues overnight. It takes years. I mean, look at people who, and once again, it's you lose a lot of perspective in depression. You lose the ability to really, I think, kind of see the world for what it is, and to see other people for what they are. There are lots of people around you who have drug addictions, who alcoholism has been something rampant throughout all of human history. In Russia and a lot of Eastern Europe, it's almost the norm. So a lot of these people will take years, if not decades, and they'll never fully recover from their alcoholism. That's just kind of an example. But they just have to kind of keep plodding along and try to say, okay, I mean, I think that's how Alcoholics Anonymous is. It's you try to go as long as you can without drinking, and then you go back to trying to going for as long as you can without. And it's important to realize, if you're going to make this long-term journey to try to change your situation or to improve yourself, the number one thing you can't do, and this is, I fail this all the time, but this is just kind of my advice, is don't give up if you fail. You're going to fail a lot. You're trying to get out of, in a lot of cases, a very dark hole, but try to just gradually make changes in your life. Whether that's, like I said, if you never leave your house, maybe start going to church one day on Sunday. That's kind of an easy way to get out of your house. You can just leave afterwards, like I do. You don't even have to talk to anybody. But just getting out and acclimatizing yourself is healthy. Maybe, like I said, if you need to like go to a coffee shop or something and sit around. If you need to lose weight or you need to get in shape, maybe just start walking an hour one day a week. Like, these are little things, but you have to start small. You need to get the momentum going. You can't just go from being a complete neat who doesn't really interact with people to having like a wife and kids overnight. That's just not going to happen. You need to acclimatize yourself, and you need to realize that this is the only way you can succeed. It's the only way that you're going to be able to change your situation is a step at a time. And radical life changes might work for some people, and it takes for some people. But for a lot of us, it's too hard. So I think as long as you you can look back and say, I'm in a better place now than I was a year ago, be it financially, mentally, socially. If you can look back and say, in some way, I'm in a better place now than I was, I don't know, 6 months, a year ago, 5 years ago, then that'll bring you some measure of comfort, but in a good way. So when you're stuck in the rut, you can't just flail around. You can't just try to jump out of the hole. You have to gradually build your way out. Because giving up that comfort, giving up that certainty all at once is just something people can't do. Some people can, but for the vast majority of us, it's just not something. It doesn't matter what you say to them. It doesn't matter how much you bully them or guilt them, etc. It's not going to achieve anything. And once again, is a lot of these situations caused by self-indulgence? Is it caused by personal flaws and bad decisions? Yeah, but so what? Are you going to try and come up with? Are we going to try and understand the problems and solve them, or are we going to try to just kind of guilt people over it? And that doesn't work. It doesn't work to just yell at people, to just abrasively tell them that they're losers, whatever. That's the last thing that they need. They do need to be given advice. They need to be told, look, you have to go and do something. But like I said, even if it's something small, and that's something that all my good therapists have taught me, and it's the only thing I think in my life that's ever really worked. So hopefully that kind of made sense. Hopefully that helped people, and that made you, I don't know if it makes you feel better, but that's kind of my attempt at it. So God bless. Hopefully everyone will be able to start taking small steps towards solving their issues. I'll talk to you guys later.